Okay, welcome to VueJS Athens Meetup number 13. With us, we have JJ from the Vue Core team. Say hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi,
So,
hello, hello
JJ, can you
everyone.
hear us?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
perfect. Nice. So, we have with us JJ, and also we have Andres, who will join us later. We'd like to start with JJ's talk. So, without any further ado, let's start.
Okay. Uh, yeah. So let's begin. Hello everyone. First of all, super excited to be here. Yeah, today's topic. Yeah, I'll just start. So today's topic is about Vue SFCs versus web components. So yeah, I'd like to introduce myself a little bit. So I'm Zhao Jinjiang, software engineer at Bit, also a Vue.js core team member living in Singapore. And below is my GitHub ID, Twitter ID, and my email address. So yeah, today's agenda. So we'll talk about some background of Vue SFC and web components, and then we'll just do the comparison. Yeah, of course. And then we'll talk about the relationship between Vue.js and web standards. So that's the agenda today. And let's begin from the background. So first, you might wonder, I think you already know what is Vue SFC. Um, yes. Vue SFC just stands for single file component. As you can see, usually it's just a file that allows you to define a component with script, template, and style in just one file. So it's called single file component. And you might also wonder what is web components. So according to the description on MDN, web component is a suite of different technologies, allowing you to create reusable custom elements with their functionality encapsulated away from the rest of your code, and utilize them in your web applications. So in terms of the technology, there are just some WCC specs, which are still work in progress, including custom elements, shadow DOM, and HTML elements, etc. There are even more. You can find them on the GitHub pages. There are a lot of proposals there. So far. And if we look at the code example, the raw web components are a bit more verbose. It's based on an ES class that extends the HTML element and support a constructor to initialize the content and other necessary behaviors. Once the class is defined, you can just call the custom elements .define to register the custom element and then consume it with the tag name as a normal HTML as well. So also with web component together, we also have a companion library called lit. It provides a more concise way to define web components. So here's an example on BitCloud. My company, which is a component-based development tool and cloud service. So, okay. So the code sample is like this. Just define a component name and then some styles and some properties like name you can specify, and with the HTML template to display hello with the property name. So to consume it, we can just write the HTML tag with the attribute name with the value world. Then it will be just rendered as the green hello world as expected. So that's a demo. Let's continue. So talk about, if we look back to the history, the web component spec was first introduced in 2013, quite long ago, with the first companion project called Polymer. Then in 2014, VueJS 1.0 was released. However, at that moment, there was no SFC yet. The Vue SFC spec was introduced in 1 year later, in 2015, with Vue Loader and Vueify, which are the plugins to compile Vue SFCs in Webpack and Browserify, those two popular bundlers at that moment. We still use Webpack now, but for Browserify, yeah, maybe it's not. And in 2018, the Polymer project was evolved to Lit, as we mentioned, which is a more lightweight and modern library for web components. And in 2020, VueJS plugin Vue was introduced to support Vue SFC as the latest official recommendation till now. So that's about history. And the reason I prepared this topic also because there were some recent discussions about web component and frameworks. One of the triggers might be probably the post by Ryan Carnieto, the creator of SolidJS, titled "Web Components Are Not the Future." In this post, he argued about the limitation of web components in terms of the performance and the developer experience, and he suggested that the future of the web development should be more like the modern frameworks like React, Vue, and Svelte, etc. And another following one was by Lea Varou from W3C, titled "Web Components Are Not Framework Components," and it's okay. In that post, she made the point that there are slightly different marketplaces for web components, and they called framework components. And she suggested that the web components should be eventually the build target of the modern frameworks. So for those discussions above, I guess you might also have your own opinion. It's totally fine. However, as a Vue.js developer, you might also wonder what are the differences and similarities between Vue SFCs and the web components. That's what we are going to talk about today. So let's just start compare. First of all, they are all component-based developments for sure. Component-based web development is a very great way to structure your web application into small pieces and independent, which is called components. It breaks down the complexity of an application in a modular way and further make it easy to maintain and at the same time testable, reusable, and collaborative. So let's see feature by feature for Vue SFC and web components. The first one I'd like to talk about is the registration. So in Vue, from the for the left side, you can see you can import another component and use it only in the current component directly. It's called local registration. And at the same time, you can also call the app.component method globally, which is called global registration as well. And in web components, you can only do global registration by calling the class element.define method, as we mentioned before. So that's about the registration. And then second one I like to talk about is the templates and slots. So template is a declaratory way to define the structure of your component. You can just write HTML tags instead of calling a bunch of complex DOM APIs like create element, append child, set attribute, etc. Slots is a way to accept content from the parent component. You can define a slot by the slot tag, and then from the parent component outside, pass content into it through a vslot template. Then in web components, you can do the same thing with the template and slots, but instead of the vslot template, it's much simpler. You should just use slot attribute instead, which is simpler than Vue. And I will explain why later about the Vue syntax. Then the third one is about props. So besides template and slots, you can also pass in some data from parent to child via the props. In Vue, you can just call define props to define a prop in a component and then pass some data from outside by setting the prop from the parent. In web components, you can do the similar thing, but as we know, there are two concepts in HTML, attribute and properties. For attributes, you should use the static member observed attributes to specify the attribute you want to observe. And then you can observe and handle the changes from the method attribute changed callback. For properties, we will cover it later. Quite the same, quite similar. The next one is about events. So this is special for the case you want to pass data from a child back to the parent. So in Vue, you can call define emit to get an emitter in a component, and then you can call it anytime with the event type and the payload. From the outside, you just use the v-on directive to listen to the event and do some further operations. Then in web components, we just use the native DOM event. However, to ensure the event can be popped up through the custom elements, you need to set the composed flag on when creating the events. So that's the caveats. Next, lifecycle hooks. In Vue, the most commonly used lifecycle hooks might be these three: on-mounted, on-updated, and on-unmounted, right? In web components, there are two callbacks called connected callback and disconnected callback, quite like the on-mount and on-unmounted. Then for on-updated, there's no equivalent in web components, mostly because in Vue, we use the component level virtual DOM to manage the rendering result in between, which web components doesn't have. Okay, next is the scoped CSS. Sometimes you might want the styles only affect its own component instead of floating the whole document. So in Vue, you can just add the scoped attribute in the style tag to achieve that. Then in web components, the syntax is slightly different, which is putting the style tag inside the template tag instead. Okay, so far that's the feature by feature comparison. Now let's see some examples. The first example I like to show is about Vue. So let's see the effect and the code side by side. So first example, first is for the registration. So you can see there are two components in the template, but we just registered one of them in the component. I can tell that another one is registered globally through the Vue environment on bits, which is inside another environment mounter, which called the app.component here to register the global component. So it's rendered like from the left side. Let's go back to the example, the source code. Second example of the Vue single file component is about the template and slot. So let's see the child component first. It has a slot with the name myText with the default content in red. Then for consuming the component, there are two examples. One is with the specified custom slot content, and then another one is with nothing. So as we expect, the result first is the custom content, slot content in red, and the default slot content in red. The next example is about the props and events. So let's take a look at the child first. We define a prop named foo and also a event emitter hello. Then we render the value of the foo in the h1 tag, and also we have a click event which emit a hello, event outside to the outside. Then from the outside we get the hello event and set the message to the paragraph. So let's see how it looks like. It looks like a hello world in h1 tag, and then when we click it, we will get the message popped up. The next one, the final one, is the scoped style. So you can see there's a scoped style which put the paragraph in red. So quite obvious. Yeah, the content is in red as expected. So that's the first bunch of examples. Oops, sorry. First bunch of examples about Vue SFC. Then another one is about web components. Same. Let's see how it looks like from the left side and see the source codes from the right side. The first example is also same for the registration, but this is only the global registration. So it only works globally with the my component one. That's the first example. Then the second example is about templates and slots. So you can see we also use the template and the slot also in red with the slot with the default content, and we consume it in two ways. One with specified slot content and another one with nothing. And the rendering result is as we expected. This next one is about attribute. So like we mentioned, we have observed attributes, and then attributes change callback, which update the content of the class element with the value of the new with the new attribute value. And we also have a button. So once we click the button, it will set attribute with the another value. So let's see. Currently it's a bar. Then we click the button, it will change to bus. The next example is exactly the same effect, but implemented in properties. So based on the previous one, we add the property binding with the getter and the setter. And also when we click it, we change the way from the setting attribute into setting the properties. So yeah, just the same. And the last one, also the scope to cell. You can notice the style tag inside the template. The effect is the same. So yeah, that's it. Back to the slides. Let's continue. So that's about the feature by feature comparison and demos. Then there are some other additional features that only Vue SFCs has. The first one is the scoped slot. It's quite interesting. So instead of static content in normal slot, in Vue, it can also accept templates with dynamic data in a component slot. Like you can define the slot with the vbind directive, and then in the slot content, you can just consume the data from the child with the slot with the binding. So the rendering logics like from the parent into the child and then back to the content outside. That's the first one. Then the next one is vModel directive. The concept is from the MVVM architecture, which allows you to easily keep the data reactive and in sync between the view and the model. That's particularly very useful for web form inputs. I believe every Vue developer will agree with that. Then the third one is the inject and provide API pairs, which is an easy way to achieve we call the prop drilling. Yeah. Okay. For more details about Vue single file components, we have a dedicated docs in our website, and we also have more Vue SFC examples. Since the time is quite limited, I will just skip this part. I will share the link of this slide later, so you can freely to refer to the examples for sure. Then let's move on. So far, we have talked about all the features in the Vue SFCs and the web components. You might also wonder, can we say that web components can be the foundation of Vue SFCs? That's a very interesting question. Let's see it one piece by another. So first of all, for consuming web components in Vue, according to the class elements everywhere test, VueJS just got 100% compatibility with the web component specs. That means you can consume web components in VueJS without any issues. Then second, for consuming Vue SFCs as web components, or what about that? You can rename the Vue SFC files with the CE Vue extension name. The CE just stands for custom elements in web components, and then use the define custom element method from the Vue package to do that. Then you can just run custom element define to register the component as a web components. So yeah, here is another demo. This demo is about how we set up Vue components into web components. So this is just a Vue starter project. There is a Vue app.vue component, which include imported hello world component. So the hello world component is the upper side, the bottom side of the app. So in this demo, I will show you how to change how to consume the hello world component in a web component way. So first, let's just remove the import statement, and then go to the component file, rename it as ce.vue. Then back to the main.js. That's how we do that. We just we import the hello world component, and second, we register the hello world component as a web component, as a custom element. And then back to the app. Now we can resume the component, but instead we need to use the kebab case, which is the convention of web components. So it works back as expected. But this time it's the standard native web components instead of the Vue SFC. Okay. Let's go. However, if we compare, it works. However, if we compare it feature by feature, there are some tiny issues. So first, web component doesn't support scoped registration, as we mentioned, which is a very common way in Vue. Then second, web component doesn't support scoped slots, which requires something like maybe dynamic data binding in the native templates to make it work. And also in HTML, it also have both attribute and properties. Both of them have some caveats to match the props in Vue. For example, attributes only accept strings, which doesn't support complex non-primitive data as well. And for properties, they are not part of the template. So it's only part of the JavaScript. You can't set the properties in templates. So yeah, that's a limitation so far. And more importantly, I think, is the performance, or let's say the cost, the potential cost. Since web component is quite like a unified trade-offs among multiple current frameworks, it might not be the best choice for all the cases, right? So in terms of the rendering logics, reactivity system, scoped styling, interoperation, etc., you don't know. So when you decide to adapt web components, you actually have to be aware of the trade-offs behind you are making. So I have to say it's still a long way to go. However, one thing for sure, which is sticking to component-based development for the win. And on Bit, we have both the dev guide for Vue and Lit. So if you are interested in, please feel free to take a look. And also on a VueJS doc side, we also have a dedicated page talking more about the Vue SFCs and web components. Okay, that's the comparison part. Then it's time to talk about the relation between VueJS and web standards. So first, I like to say Vue follows the shape and spirit of the web standard very well. The web standard not only means the web component standards, but for all kinds of standard in like WCC, TC39, etc. So first, you can see Vue's component system is very much like the web components in terms of the high-level design and the particular features, right? And second, the way we use Vue, like CSS classes, and styles bindings and form input, etc., is very close to the native HTML and DOM usage. That means once you have been familiar with those web standards, you can easily pick up and understand Vue APIs without learning a lot of new things. Not to mention the various directive modifiers in the last mile. Let's see some examples. So even if you're not familiar with Vue, I believe you can literally know what they are doing just by reading the code. And we can also believe once the web standard get involved further, in most of the cases, VueJS can just follow and adapt them very, very quickly. Second, Vue keeps adopting the latest web standard and technologies to improve its performance and features. For example, Vue's reactivity system has been evolved from the old object.define property-based, which is part of the ES5, to the modern ES proxy-based, which is part of ES6. And the next stick API, which is used to defer the execution of the function to the next stick of the task loop, has been evolved from the setTimeout to setImmediate and then to the mutation observer as a workaround to trigger a macro task. And then finally to the ES promise, which is the most modern and efficient way to do that. And third, Vue also keeps inspiring and contributing to the web standard as well. For example, the CSS scoping spec proposal, which is a new CSS standard to scope the CSS styles to a particular element, is very much like the shape of what Vue scope style does. And the native ES signals proposal, which is proposed by a number of modern frameworks, including Vue, is the foundation of the reactive data structure that nowadays a lot of frameworks are based on. We believe once it has been accepted, it will literally improve both the performance and the bundle size of your web applications, for sure. Yeah, I think so far that's all. In the end, I would like to say, let's just make the web better together. And also welcome to try component-based development from today, especially on Bit. Yeah, that's all. Thanks for listening. Yeah, once again, super excited to be here to talk about Vue.js and web components. That's all. Thanks.
So thank you so much, JJ, for your presentation. It was really interesting. Do we have any questions for JJ to answer? Oh, good. Okay, so we can reach you out on Twitter, right?
Sure.
LinkedIn?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly
For
Twitter.
further-
Yeah.
Mostly tweets. Okay. Okay. Nice. Perfect. So
Thanks.
again, big thanks for being here, virtually being here. So again, take care and thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah. Take care. Yeah. Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Now, our very own Andreas Panopoulos will have a chance to give us a talk. But before the talk, we have something for you. So, Cities.js is coming again here in Athens, Greece, in November 27 and 29. And we will raffle lucky for a lucky winner a ticket. So we will start the raffle right now. So give us a moment. Let me know if you need help with this. So first of all, we're gonna need you to join or fill a form in order to yeah, perfect. Yeah, scan this QR code so you can fill the form in order to participate to the raffle for the City.js conference in the November. Everyone good? Nice. Let's do the raffle and hope the winner be among you guys. So, have you been to CityJS conference before? No? No one? Yes, I remember you. You too? No? No, never? Really? Why? Nice, nice. You should give it a chance this time. And yeah, it will be great. Yeah, it's the third time that CityJS comes back to Athens. No, third year and fourth time this November. So yeah, as you can see, there is a lot of engagement. So I encourage you to look at it. So are we good? Perfect. So who's gonna win the ticket? Yes. Um, Perfect. And the winner is Yorgos Topsis or Topsis. He's a friend of yours. Okay, he won a ticket. So yeah, big applause for Yorgos. Okay, perfect. So right now we're going to present Andreas Panopoulos' talk. He will present it. Yeah. So give us a moment to join his monitor to the screen. Yeah. Δεν το βλέπεις και εσένα. Αν εσύ και την οθόνη σου στην Όχι. Σόγκερ. Αυτό works. Αυτά το present. Should
So thank you everybody for being here. My name is Andreas Panopoulos. I'm a tech lead at the box. And some interest of mine is using the music, photography, cycling, and of course punch jokes. So if any of you is want to have the daily dose of a punch joke, you can visit the URL up on my slide. And the rest is history, I would say. So my talk has to do with server-side rendering and static-side generation, two techniques that I would say are not something new in the web development. So starting with server-side rendering, it is the process where the server is rendering and serving the website, the client side, to the browser. The benefit of using server-side rendering is we have improved the SEO as we have the render page in the search engines can crawl our page and do the SEO ranking. We have the first paint, a fast, basically, first paint. So this is produce a good user experience as the average time for a user to wait in a website to load is almost 3 seconds. So as we have a render page at once, we have a first paint. Anyway, so this helps also for the crawlers to crawl our site. And of course, we have the opportunity to have dynamic content to our website. Of course, we have some challenges to work on, and this is the increased server load, as we have to render our page and serve it to the client. So meaning that if we have high traffic, this can be resource intensive. It is a bit more complex because we have to handle both the server-side code as also the client-side code, and there are cases that we may have a mismatch between the server-side rendered code and the client-side hydrated code, and this is something that we may have to handle. And of course, as we need a server in order to render our page, we need to have a server running, right, to be ready to render our page upon request. And this may increase our cost. Of course, we have some techniques to reduce this, but we're going to talk a bit later. As I said before, in the client side, we have a hydration happening. What is this? When the server is rendering the HTML and serves it to the client side, we have a static HTML page. So the client side JavaScript needs to act in order to make our code interact, and this is achieved through event listeners and by adding the component logic, and gives a more interactive experience to the user. The whole process, this process is called hydration. Some frameworks that support hydration are Next, Svelte, Next, Remix, and Angular that I have missed to add the logo here. So the other technique is the static site generation. In this, we are rendering our web page during the build time, and we serve it statically on the client side. So we have basically a static site. The benefits of this is that we have extremely fast page load. Of course, this is good for our SEO. It is a benefit for our scalability because we can handle a lot of traffic because our server has to only handle static assets. It is more secure, as I would say, because we don't have any code running on the server side. It only serves static files on the browser, on the client. And because this is a more simple approach on our server, it is cost effective. Sorry, I missed something. No. So the challenges we have is the build times. As our site gets bigger and we have more pages, the build times of our project may start being take a larger time in order to finish. We have a case that we cannot serve dynamic content. We have to leverage some other techniques in order to be able to have kind of dynamic content in our static site generation. And we have a stale render state. That means that after updating our code base, we need an amount of time in order our change to be visible to the client. In previous slide, I talked about kind of dynamic content. So there is this technique called incremental static generation. And with this technique, we can basically re-render specific pages upon request and not rebuild the whole page. So this kind of adds dynamically content to our static build. Some popular frameworks that support static site generation are again Nuxville, all the basic major frameworks, as also Astro Gatsby, and there are some more also that I'm missing here. So, side by side, the two techniques regarding the performance in server-side rendering, we have first faster first content for paint, and we can serve dynamic content. In static generation, we have again extremely load fast page, but it may require regeneration of some pages in order to update its content and make it count dynamically. Regarding SEO, both techniques provide an excellent SEO benefits, as both techniques provide the render page, so the search engine crawlers can crawl our site and do their magic ranking our page. And of course, by using the server-side rendering, we can have dynamic meta tags. This, depending on our project, we may need that or we may not, but it is a good addition. Regarding scalability, by using the server-side rendering, again, depending on how much traffic we have on our page, on our server, we may need to update our infrastructure. Rather than in static site generation, that because again we're serving static assets through CDN, we can handle a lot of traffic. Regarding the developer experience, server-side rendering, as I said, it is a bit complex because we have to handle again the server-side code with the client-side code. And there are cases that our client-side code cannot run on the server side, meaning that, for example, we cannot use the browser API running on the server side. So window or local storage cannot be called on the server side. It is only works on the client side. So we have to be careful of how to handle cases like that, like this. On the static site generation, it is a lot simpler, and we serve content from site with static content, basically. Regarding flexibility, server-side rendering, it's better suited for big applications and for applications that want to have updated data. In the other hand, with static site generation, is ideally for pages that have static content or content that is not get updated very frequently. Let's say that would be blog documentation sites or a business site maybe. So we have some hybrid approaches that can, let's say, handle the space between the server side rendering and static side rendering. Then is the one we talk the statics incremental static generation. The second one is Jamstack, where we are decoupling the front end from the back end. So we generate a static site, and by using APIs, microservices, and webhooks, we can just update the related page to the updated content. And regarding the server-side rendering, we have the edge rendering that enables us to render our server-side code closer to the user. This helps to have reduced latency. And both Next and Next can leverage this rendering method. Of course, in order to use this edge rendering, we have to use one of the Vercel, Cloudflare, or Netlify platforms, or I don't know if there is any other supporting this. So, in Next, by default, is set to use server-side rendering. But what if we want to enable the static site generation? There are kind of three methods to do this. The one, and I would say the easier, is to run this command, next generate, and this will automatically handle the rest. The second one is to define the SSR property to true inside the next config. And the third one is to, by using the nature object, to define specific routes that we want to be pre-rendered. Now, how we can configure the incremental static regeneration in Next again? Again, we can either pass the SSR through property in our route rules inside the Next config, or we can pass the time in seconds that we want this page to be cast. So after 1 hour, it will be generated with the updated content. And the last one, if you want to have more fine-grained control, is to include the route and define specific queries that we want to use this incremental server-side rendering method. Choosing the right approach, server-side rendering, it better comes for if you have a search page that want to display the results, if you want to display personalized content to the user, depending on their choices, or if you have a big application, or if you need, of course, a dynamic SEO method. On the other hand, for static site generation, as I said before, it is more suitable for pages that we don't have frequently updated the content, such as blogs, so we can generate our blog, and after that we push another post, we can regenerate the static site holding the new post. And documentations and business page, I would say, but they'll have many changes also. Of course, we have to define what are the needs in our project and select the better approach, either server-side rendering or static site generation. We have to leverage the caching validation strategies. Otherwise, we may have issues that after updating our code, it takes a lot of time for our changes to be displayed in our client to the clients. Of course, to optimize our image in our assets and use the CDN. So to sum all up, I would say there is not a specific approach that is the best for all cases. Depending on our needs, we have to select which approach we're gonna follow. Of course, with a hybrid approach, it helps the balance trade-off between the server-side rendering and static-side generation. So we can kind of have dynamic content again on a static side, but if this is gonna be updated frequently, maybe it's better to switch to a server-side rendering for that case. That was it. Thank you very much.
Nice. Do you have any questions for Andreas?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm thinking, we're going to what are the main points of going back to SSR now? I'm saying back because we used to have a lot of load in our service in order to deliver some websites in the past, and then we moved to SPAs to upload the servers and bring this back to the client. And now we're actually trying to create a hybrid model to be able to share the cost, or Google dictates the SEO market, so we have to comply in order to reach the standards of the Lighthouse, for example.
Look, I would say if there is, again, depending on the project, if you have a lot of process to be made in the client side, meaning we get the data and have to manipulate them, maybe it is better to do that on the server side. So we have a rendered page with the correct data, right? And it is the first load is a lot quicker than having to make the calls from the client side, get the data, modify them accordingly, and then render the page. And the other big thing is the SEO. Okay, it depends. That depends again on the page, right? Because if it is a public page, of course, we need to have good ACO. If it is an admin dashboard probably or a page under a login screen, we don't have that issue. But again, it has to do with the calculations we do in order to modify our data before we display the first image on the site. And nowadays, with the edge rendering I mentioned before, using Cloudflare pages over server Netlify, we can reduce the server cost because we don't have a server running all the time. It is, let's say, in a stale condition. So upon request, we have a serverless function. It's phoned to somehow the server to do the rendering and then get stale again. So this reduces a lot the cost of our server. Any other question?
We take also questions from the YouTube. If there are any questions.
Yes.
But I think we're good. Andreas, thank you for your
Thank you.
talk.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Closing speech.
Thank you everyone for being here. It was a big honor for us to join the 13th VueJS Athens Meetup. So, if you weren't lucky like our friend George Topsis, you can scan this QR in order to get a discount for the CTJS conference that will be on November. And let's get some pizzas. Thank you. Bye.